Alright, welcome to episode 3. So in episode 3, we're starting with the delicate task of fixing this power switch / volume pot. So you can see that I've got it removed from the radio, and I'm attempting to remove the back cover, which is a piece of, I think it's cardboard, I'm not sure what it is. You gotta remember this is from the late 30s, so whatever they had back then is what it is. And we're going to be really gentle with this thing because I really don't want to break it. But it looks like they've got some of these terminals just a little bent to hold it on. So the first thing we're going to try to do is get this off very gently. Obviously, before I removed it, I took a lot of pictures of the connections under the radio so that I have good documentation. And that will help us put it back together. A lot of the wires that go to this thing are actually on the battery wires, so there'll be a good opportunity to replace them. But let's see what's in here. We'll both get to see it for the first time. Just about there. There we go. Nothing. It's just an insulator. Okay, that's good to know. And it looks like to get this power section off, this is the power section, this is the on-off switch. Looks like it's a 3 amp, 125 volt. It says 1 amp, sorry. Alright, to get this off, this is where it gets a little tricky. So you have to remove or bend up these two tabs here. And there's one here, and that will remove the power section. This thing is just so locked. Nothing I could do about it. So let's not be afraid. Piece of cake. Let's just move forward. Nothing to be afraid of here, guys. If a human built it, a human can fix it. Right? That's how it works. Alright, so we've got these bent up. Now we don't want to snap them off. We've got to be really careful about that. We just want to bend it back enough so we can get that off. Let's take a good picture of it. Okay. Hopefully no springs come flying out. Okay, that should do it. Okay, there we go. I'm going to put that there. And we have this washer that goes in like so. And this thing is still very hard to turn. So it's definitely this section that's bad. In order to get that out, let's see what we have to do here. Looks like we got the same deal. So we got a couple of tabs here that we have to remove. So we're on a roll. Let's do that. How many of you are cringing right now? Don't cringe. Piece of cake. Piece of cake. Again, the trick here is we don't want to bend anything and break it. We just want to open it up enough to get it apart. We don't want to stress out the metal. Let's see what that does. That should allow us to remove this top. Looks like it's hanging up right here. Okay. And in here is our pot. Now I could probably try to put a bunch of deoxit in there. This is our wiper. I don't think this thing is designed to come through. And I don't see, oh, I see a compression ring right there. That's what's holding it in. Okay, I'm going to play with this and see if I can get this compression ring out right there. See it? and see if I can get that to come out. So I'll go do that and I'll be right back. Okay, we've got our mechanism nice and smooth now. Runs really well. So I put some deoxit in there, a little WD-40. I wasn't able to get that compression ring off, and that was after I stabbed myself in the thumb with the screwdriver, but it's all good. So this is this is working really well now. So now we're going to reassemble. So looking at this mechanism, I see that there's like a phenolic ring in here, so we're going to clean that off really good with some alcohol, right? We don't want to put anything together with oil and dirt. So a little bit of alcohol in there will get rid of all that gunk in there. Okay. Alright, so let's reassemble. I don't need to take you along for that ride. I'm sure you know how to reassemble things, you guys. So I'll begin the reassembly process and then we'll test it out and see how it works. Okay? Be back. Okay, we've got this this cover on now. Still goes smooth. Now we're going to put this little washer in here. Like so. I don't like the way that... Okay, so the next thing I wanted to do is, you'll notice I put the faceplate back on. I wanted to do the dial string. The dial string diagram calls for 36¼ inches from knot to knot. So of course I took out my stock of dial string, and you know what it is from knot to knot? 36 inches. So I'm short by ¼ inch. So I have to wait for that to come in, so we're not going to get to that. One thing I want to cover, I did replace the volume, fix the volume control, so I'll show you that in a moment. In my last video, I was reading through the comments, and there was one particular comment which caused this kind of song to come to my mind. Take a listen. Alright, so we're not going to have any of that crap, so we're going to fix it. So we're going to remove this can, and we're going to replace this wire. This wire, I just don't like it. I said that in the last video as well. It's just mungy. Just don't like it. Alright, so let's do that. Be right back. Alright, first things first. The volume / power switch, smooth as can be. See? No problems. That's done. Alright, to get that can out, here's what we need to do. There's 3 wires coming out of the can. There's a green one, right here. There's a blue one, and there's a yellow one. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to snip those off, and there's two nuts right here. There's one here, and there's one here. That whole can will come out. Then we'll take it apart and see what we got inside. So let's do that. Right back. And just like that, our can is removed. Okay? Now you'll see when they put this in here, this coil is actually touching the sides of the can right there. So it wasn't put in straight. To get it out of the can, obviously, first thing we're going to do is we're going to have to cut this, which, see how crappy that is? I'm not happy with that. So we'll cut that off, like so. We'll make sure we keep all of our screws together. And then we're going to have to take off this nut right here, which I've learned through experience you have to be really careful with, because that post coming up to the top is brass, and if you over tighten it, you're going to snap it. You just got to go nice and easy. Like that. Okay, there's the nut. We're actually going to snip this down a little bit more because that's not going to fit. Okay, so we should be able to take out the coil now. Let's see what happens. There's the washer, and here's our coil. Okay, here's the wire that goes up to the top of the grid cap right there. Make that a little closer so you can see it. Goes right here to this post, and then these wires attach underneath the radio. These wires are hard as a rock, so we're just going to go delicate and change these as well. We'll make sure we follow the color code so we can attach it into the radio. And in here you'll see there's a piece of fish paper. That's what it's called, and it's basically an insulator. And that fish paper is fine in there. Alright. So while we have this off, we'll clean it. And we'll straighten out the top. You'll see the top is bent like that. And the way you do that is you take one of these and you just kind of go like this. There you go, nice and flat. Okay, so we're gonna take the initiative now and start replacing these wires. One thing you got to be careful of is you don't want to disturb the wires that go off the coil, and you want to make sure you test as you go along. Okay, I'll do that off camera. There's no reason to do that while you watch. You guys know how to solder. So let me get that process going. I'll be right back. The other thing I want to show you before I take this here is look at the dirt on top of those screws. All right, so it's a good opportunity to clean it as well. All right, take your alcohol, clean it up. Actually looks like the screw's a little rusty. I have to think about taking that out and soaking it in the evaporust. I'll decide that later. Okay, we have our grid wire installed, and what I did basically is I tinned the wire and I made a little hook that went around this post, and all I did was apply a little bit of solder to the top here. You don't want to put a lot of heat on these things because you'll break these connections. So that's nice and solid now. Alright, we'll continue. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to create a little hook, put it around there, same thing with the other ones. Be back. Alright, we have all of our wires replaced, and obviously before we put it back in the can we want to test connectivity and make sure that the coil is working well. If I follow this coil correctly, it should be this blue and this yellow, which are connected. So let's put one lead there. We've got our meter set for continuity, like that. I'm going to go right here. Good. And if I check the other leads, I should get nothing. Okay, good. Let's move to this pair, right there. This is the top, the grid cap, and the green. Good. Okay. Good. So we have a successful operation. Now we're going to put this back in the can, and then we'll test it again. Okay, she's back in the can. Remember, when you do this, do not over tighten that nut. All that nut's doing is holding the coil in there. Alright, it just has to be snug. If you make it too tight, you're going to snap it. It's a brass screw. Then you're going to have to figure out how to get another brass screw in there. Been there, done that, guys. So let's just test the connectivity one more time and make sure we're good to go. It should be this green and this top grid. Good. And this blue and this yellow. Good to go. Alright, this is ready to reinstall back on the radio. Let's do it. I should note that when I put this coil back in the can, I actually put it in the right way. If you remember when I took it out, it was actually leaning against the side, so it's now right in the center where it needs to be. Alright, there's the finished product. Our can is back installed. And never again will we hear the following. Okay, our next step is to power the radio up again. Let's make sure that everything's working like it's supposed to, like it did before we did this. Alright, so the two things that we've done that we haven't tested yet are the volume/power pot and the rewiring of this can. Okay, so let's power it up and see what we get. Alright, let's do our first test here. So we're going to turn on our battery eliminator. Let's turn on the switch. Alright, so I took the pot out because the pot's not working right. So I want to show you the difference between a digital meter and a analog meter, which is what this is. So I currently have one of these leads to the wiper, like so, in the center. Okay, like that. Let's start from the 0 position. Power's off. Now right now, with the power switch off, looks like I have about 6, 7, 8, about 9K. Because I'm in the 10K scale. Let's turn it on. you'll see it jumps all over the place. So I have it fully open now, and it jumps down to like 4. And if I turn a little bit, it goes to 0. Then it engages and goes all the way up to 50. So the pot's not working right. Let me show you this again so you can see what I'm doing. This is the off position. Watch the meter. Jumps up. Jumps down to 0. Jumps back up. So I got to take this thing apart again and see what's going on there. So let me do that and we'll be back. Okay, looking at this pot, I had to take it apart again. It still wasn't working right. So part of this hobby is being humble and admitting when you screw up, and that's me. So I didn't take out this C-clip and remove the whole thing and take it apart. It turns out this little ear right here, from years of use, I guess, was bent and it wasn't engaging properly. So I've now taken the whole thing apart and I'm going to clean it and put it back together and we'll see what happens. That's what happens when you take shortcuts, guys. Be back. So this potentiometer is a little flaky, honestly. It's probably because I took it apart and cleaned it. I have to assume that I had something to do with it. Here's the power switch off. Okay. Now when I turn the switch on, it behaves pretty well. Right? I'm turning slowly. Then I get to this spot right around here, and all of a sudden it jumps all the way up. So I can never get it to 0. So this is wide open, which means that if I put this back in the radio, my volume will work to a point, and then it'll go full blast. So we're going to have to replace this pot. This is a double pole, single throw 500K potentiometer, audio taper. Okay, so we're at a little bit of an impasse here on this radio. There's a couple things we're waiting for before we can continue. One is the dial string. So without the dial string, can't do that. And the other one is the volume / on-off switch. And we need to replace this. It has a dead spot on it, and I showed you on the meter how it starts at basically 500. It's a little more like 600K. It's supposed to be 5. Comes down, and when you get to the bottom, it shoots back up again. So there's something wrong with the pot, which is fine. Considering the age of this thing, I think it's okay. It's 80 years old. This particular pot is a double pole single throw. So basically, you look at your power section, you've got 2 separate sections here. So we've got that on order. That's about $12, I think it was. And that'll be here. It's a Clarostat. It's a long shaft, so we don't have to worry about any of that stuff. I can actually cut it down. So when that gets in, we'll put it in the radio. And then I've also decided not to paint these tube shields. I decided to try to clean them up. And there was a lot of oxidation on these things. I was able to use a little bit of 800 grit sandpaper, wet sandpaper, and a little bit of, basically I soaked it in Evaporust for a while, just tried to clean this up. I used a little bit of a Dremel tool to get in these little nooks and crannies, and they're looking a whole lot better. So we're going to use those tube shields. So once we get those parts in, the dial string and the new pot, we'll be ready to put this radio aside and start working on the power supply. And I've got a few parts for the power supply that I'm waiting for. So once we get that in, we'll be ready to move forward. Okay, so I think for now I'll put this episode up and leave it there for a moment. And when I get the parts in, I'll show you how that all works out and what that looks like. So that's it for now. Again, we made some good progress. We changed out that wire in the cap can. We've done a few other things. We've tried to repair this pot, but this one was just way beyond repair. It actually works good, which is a shame, but there's a stop in there that doesn't work correctly. So anyway, that's the story on this thing, and we'll see you guys in episode 4. Have a great night. By the way, if you're worried about my thumb, don't be. Looks pretty good today. Doesn't hurt much. See that black line there? That's where the screwdriver went underneath it. Safety first is the rule in this hobby, my friends. Only reason why I'm sharing it with you. Okay? So no blood. It's all good. What can I tell you? See you later.